Hey, thanks for joining. In Raquel, let's get going. So Mike's note that he's probably not going to be able to make it. I didn't see anything from Steve, but anyway, so were you able to make a submission, Raquel, and what you ended?
Yeah, no real success on that front. I mean, about around 600 or something, could not just break that barrier. And yeah,
Yeah, it was head butted against trying to get for some strange reason, my um, pandas, merging and concatenating just kept, I mean, that worked, but then when I was trying to get the target from the reveal targets, it kind of kept giving me some weird indexing error.
Okay.
And finally, I burst through that, like, the day before or the day of the competition ending, and I was able to get it running and submit it. But I ran into the dreaded, after the submission, it says, "Ooh, your submission error." And it was after the competition ended that I realized most likely what I was doing wrong when I was, so I think you had joined the last call, but the thing that Steve flipped and pointed out, the flipped approach was instead of, which is the thing I was trying originally based on our discussion, was training all new models on by appending every date to the training data and then training new models every 10 days, right? This was the approach he had. But later on, he came up with a better approach, which, again, if you think about it, it makes sense, which was there in the last 2 weeks conversation, which was instead of doing that, just, and this taught me at least something new from a couple of new things I learned from the competition, that you could actually fine tune existing models. And so what he flipped around to doing was, because when you attach the new dates that the data reveals to the training data and train every 10 days, then you have a large, gigantic, training PDF that you have to carry through, and you have to limit it by some amount and stuff. Instead, what you could do, which was something I didn't know, and thanks to Steve, I learned, is that you could train hey, Steve is there, he can explain it himself. So you could just end up training the model on a daily basis, but, like fine tune the model. So that's what I attempted to do, but I got it working on the day when the model was closing. And this stupid thing I realized I'd made a mistake was I had hard coded the number of stocks, and that's how I was, because when it gives you the test data, it gives it only for 1 day. But then on the 0th thing, as we had discussed previously, it reveals all of the reveal targets. So you have to slice the reveal targets, and instead of slicing it by the date, which is probably the right approach, I sliced it by the 200 stocks per day, thinking, 200 stocks in a day, so I'll just slice it that way. But then the problem is that it's not guaranteed in the future that you will have 200 consistent stocks every day. And that's probably my guess as to why my stupid, submission error tanked me with that approach. So I wasn't able finally to get that working in time. Steve, you want to talk about a further thing that you have done? I never got Tabnet working either, which again Steve was able to do. So Steve, I think if you could, and you're okay with, if you could share your Tabnet notebook and, like whatever the daily fine-tuning notebooks, that'd be great, because I'm sure I can learn from that.
Yeah, sorry, my computer was acting up. Took me a while to join there. Yeah, the Tabnet one, it took me a while to get it up and running, but yeah, so I was using it. I trained it on Google Colab, because yeah, like it took quite a while to train. It was pretty much the same as what we did in like Ubiquant or whatever. So yeah, and yeah, I just used all the same sort of features that were used for the LGBM, the gradient boosting thing.
Yeah, I did that, but it kept giving me, I mean, it ran and, it would successfully predict on the folds and everything. And then when I submit, it would give me the dreaded submission error.
Well, it was the one that, yeah, like, as we talked about like last week, where you have whatever it was, the bid price, those two things. Yeah, so they were the things
So
I
I
had to like take a copy of at the top.
Right. Thanks for sharing that, because I incorporated that, and even after that it failed. So that's why I want to compare, what you have done in TabNet to what I've done, and kind of realize, or at least learn from where potentially my problem of what I was doing was. Because I could, after you shared that approach, I kind of incorporated that into my TabNet code, which is, like you said, make a copy of I think the bid and ask price, and then generate the thing at the top, and then use that as you had pointed out in the code. So I did that, but even after that, my submission still had the submission error. I was really bummed, because I had put, like towards the end, I spent a lot of time on this and on the daily thing, which I think was a brilliant approach, by the way. That fact that you came up with two things I learned from it, right? Like, one is, by flipping it, you don't have to worry about. By flipping, what I mean is, earlier you had the approach of training new models. In this case, you can just continue to use the existing models and fine tune. So the fine tuning is something that I learned that you can do on the fly by changing the n estimators to like whatever, right, 2 or 3 or whatever you want. And the other thing is that flipping helps you avoid all this slicing of the training data, because you're just going after every single one rather than maintaining a fixed size of training. So I thought that was a cool idea.
I was going to share my notebook that I submitted, but yeah, I ended up at the end of the competition having this problem where none of the code cells in the notebook actually display.
Oh man,
no idea.
I was encountering something like that, but thankfully, because I couldn't even see my notebooks, and I was like, oh my God, how do I even select the one to edit, to submit and stuff? So it was doing something weird for sure towards the end of the competition.
Yeah, I reported a bug in the Kaggle discussion on bugs, but nobody ever replied to it. But yeah, it made things very hard, because of the fact when you would like run you would save the notebook, and if it had a problem, like normally, obviously the submission would show you what errors you were getting in the cell with the problem. But as you can see here, the only cells my saved notebook shows are like the markup cells. None of the code cells actually display.
This is fantastic.
Yeah,
what is going on?
It's like a ghost notebook. Everything disappeared. Wow. But yeah, the code reappears when you go to edit it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so this is like the notebook that I submitted. So yeah, like I was using sort of 3 different types of model. Yeah, so like I was using the TabNet and then 2 forms of the LGBM. And yeah, like I just made these weights up by, like submitting a load of things. Like just to find which weights would give me the best. But yeah, all of the feature stuff, it's just like come out of sort of the main public notebook, apart from the fact that, yeah, so I added in the reveal targets, which you just get, in the API. So like I add it in, and then you get like the shifts for the sort of like the lag on them. So that just gives me some extra features on that. This weight thing, like it was.
So that means, sorry, one quick question. When you add the reveal targets, and when you say you add the reveal targets, you're adding it to the, to kind of the test data that you get in order to generate the features, correct?
Yeah, well, adding it to both the training data and like as the test API goes through. So yeah, so like the revealed target, it's just the previous day's target value at that particular bucket time or whatever. So yeah, by sticking it into this, as well as getting the revealed target, then like I'm getting like the lagged revealed target as well, like just the same as you get these other features.
Do you continue to maintain a training data set, or do you just fine tune on the incremental days data revealed by test?
No, so I keep appending to the training data. So yeah, so somewhere in here, so like I load in, so this is, I took the original competition training data and like added the extra features and added the reveal targets to create me the training set. So it was the main training set that all my models were trained on. And then during like the API loop, as the new data becomes available, so here, to speed things up, it was too slow if you do it like as a pandas data frame. So like I convert it into a NumPy array, and then so like
that's probably what was my problem or something, because when I you pointed the code, you shared the code of how to fine tune. So when I applied that but used a single data frame which included the target and the training data to pass into it, and then I tried to extract the target, meaning like df target as in pandas, for some reason it just kept giving me indexing errors, like key error. And the ridiculous thing was the target existed in the columns. So when I could slice it, it would slice it, but then it would give me key error. So until I was like so frustrated, I spent like almost a day fighting that battle. And then I was like, okay, I'm just giving up. I'll just work around you and send in two data frames, one just the target and the other one which has all the features. And amazingly, that started working. I was just like this.
Right.
So I don't know what the heck was my pandas problem. Maybe I should have just switched like you did to passing in NumPy arrays.
Yeah, because I found it was like slow to append to the pandas data frames, and it was much faster to just keep appending onto the NumPy array. So yeah, so I take all the original training data, and then so like here, like this is like the standard like for loop of the API. And so like as we've said before, at the first bucket of each date ID, they give you the new reveal targets, and there's like 55 buckets. So every 55 buckets, then I go off and like add the new set of data onto the existing training data, and then when they've started scoring, when like that flag comes in here like this, when they start scoring at this point here, then I start fine-tuning my models. Obviously it means that the models, they've been trained on all of the training data, and then you've got the public test set, and so I'm not training on any of that because of the fact it was ending up, it was like it was taking too long. So yeah, I'm just fine-tuning once it starts asking for submissions.
So you're just skipping the part where between the end of previously available training data and the start of the current newly exposed test data, you skip all of that gap. You don't train on that at all.
Yeah, no, like unfortunately I'm just skipping that. I wanted to train on it, but as I say, it was like because of the fact that like at the minute on the public test set, there's what 42 dates or something,
Eight.
whereas
Right.
like on the private one there's going to be 62. And yeah, so because I actually fine tune every 5 dates, and so like I had to account for enough time to like let it get through 62 dates as opposed to 40. And so yeah, like even like with this, even with not training on the public data, it is still going to be touch and go. Like, will it make it through in time? Because yeah, like every single LGBM model I have, I fine tune it.
Okay. So one question: why do you need the training data to be appended to, since you are just using the test data? You're fine tuning on just the test data, or are you fine tuning on all of the appended training data?
Well, it only really fine tunes on like on the last 5 days of data. So like you can see
in
here,
your case, yeah. So if you're doing it on a per day, then it would be per day. But since you're doing it on 5 days, you do it on the 5 days of data, correct?
Yeah, and here I just hard coded this. So like this date ID is like sort of just before the private data starts. So like when it comes in, it'll start fine tuning on sort of the data before 5 days before it has to make the first prediction. And the reason you like append to the old training data, actually like here, as you say, it's not really being used for anything. But yeah, so like when I start appending, I only keep like a sort of fixed length of buffer. So like the old data, it'll start getting dropped. And yeah,
don't you need that older data though because of your lagging windows?
Well, you need like back what 10 days, is it, or 10 dates or something?
Okay.
Whereas yeah, like I'm keeping, I keep quite a bit.
Okay.
Because like originally as well, it was like I was training models on the entire set of data. Yeah, so you can see here. Yeah, so like I just yeah, with this is the new data that's come in, like the date IDs block, and then like I append it onto the old one. But here, in this case here, if it goes above like this number of rows, then I dump a bit of it. I dump the start of it. But yeah.
So what do you use this training data for then, Steve? Since you don't use it in the fine tuning.
Well, it is just because of the fact it was easier just to append onto what I had, and because of the fact like originally the notebook was using everything to train new models and all of the data I had, and it's just sort of a hangover from that. But yeah, because of the fact that I need to go back sort of 10 days anyway for the lagged features thing, so I could probably drop the size of this, but this wasn't a major problem. Like I was never running out of memory, so there was enough memory for things. It was just I was running out of time. Was the problem.
But other than the 10-day rotation part, by the way, that might be the other reason that my thing failed, because I was just training, but I don't know whether I was just fine tuning on the current state, but then now I'm wondering how my shifting worked on the 21-day, or not 21 days, but whatever that group by 21 that Rachel and we were discussing previously. So do you have something like that too, that where you're rotating it by the 10 or collection, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 5, or 10, or whatever that was earlier, that as we went through your code, we saw that too, right?
Yeah, so yeah, so like just when the new, like, as I say, so this thing here's, yeah, one other thing I could have looked at here was like when the date ID changes, but like I'm relying on it having 55 buckets per date. So yeah, so like when it comes onto the new date, it just like appends, yeah, the 55 buckets for the previous date onto the current training thing. And yeah, like, so it's still got the whatever, yeah, like that 21 thing. But
okay. So then the 21-day thing works, right? Because you always get the 55, which is what I was count. And by the way, that we can count on. They confirm that, if a stock appears, then all of the data for it for 55 instances is available. But where I made a mistake, I think, is in assuming that, not assuming, I just kind of took an easy route of slicing the data of 11,000, because it's 200 times 55. But that's not always, and there it doesn't matter because I just append the whole thing. That's okay. But on the other hand, because it will append whatever number of stocks exist, but then because I was appending every day, I sliced it by 200, which is wrong, which will work if all 200 stocks for 55 time periods are available, but there are some dates where that's not guaranteed, and I don't catch that. Instead, what I should have done is use the date ID to merge or to slice, and if the date as the date advances, or yeah, or as stock ID advances, then I should have done it based on that, count of how much. How do you, so for example, in your case, when you do the 3 days and you said 5 days that you do, correct?
yeah,
So how do you slice the reveal targets? Because the reveal targets, you will get 11,000 or 11,000 if all 200 stocks are available, or if there is less number of stocks, it could be less than 11,000, right? How do you slice that? On what do you slice, like in order to slice it by 3 days or 5 days?
no, so like wherever it is, like the reveal targets, you can see here. So the reveal targets, they're like getting added on every single time or whatever it is. Yeah, so like they're being appended to the test thing every single time, but it's only every 55. Yeah, so like every single time.
The data.
Yeah, every single row of the loop, every single iteration of this loop, I add the reveal target to that row, but like then it's only every 55 that I add. Then I keep the block of that, and at the end.
So when you, so you're merging it on all these, like like all those fields, that the date ID, the stock ID, the second fin bucket, the reveal targets, and then again, you merge it on date ID, stock ID, and second fin bucket. See, that's the part where I took the easy way out, which was wrong, is I just sliced, I would capture it, the whole reveal target, and then I would slice it on 200, which is wrong, because you would have to kind of merge it based on the date ID, stock ID, and second fin bucket, because that would ensure that you're just merging that second and on a particular stock for that date. And that's the mistake I made in merging, which is, and the crappy thing is it ran for the folds and other stuff, but then it kind of failed because I think unfortunately for us, the public test set they provide is just the last 3 days on which all 200 stocks exist. Because if that wasn't true, then it would have failed and I would have caught the problem. But it didn't, so I thought it worked. But then when I submit, it gives a submission error because I wasn't like slicing it on the right things or merging it on the right things. It was too late by the time I found out and submitted. Then, because the scoring failed, it was just too much time delay between when I made the mistake and when, So I wish, in fact, the one thing I was thinking of is I wish they had different number of stocks in the 3 days that they gave as the test, because that would have revealed the error in my thinking quickly.
Yeah.
I'm just blaming I should blame myself.
Steve, with your submissions, what were the 2 submissions that you selected? One was the fine tuning, and did you end up selecting one where you did the whole data fine tuning, or just last 5 days?
No, they're both fine tuning and both over like the last 5 days. The difference in my 2 submissions was when I fine tuned them. If I look at this fine tuning function, yeah, so like this is where it's like fine tuning like all of the LGBM models I have, but then yeah, so like I found that if I didn't do any fine tuning, so I've got effectively 3 models in. I've got like LGBM models with a limited set of parameters or limited set of features in, and then like another LGBM model that takes extended features. So like I fine tuned both of those, and then I've got like the TabNet models that they just remain fixed. They don't get fine tuned. So I found that to get the best score with those 3 sets of models without any fine tuning, I would have one set of weights, and like in that case, like the TabNet model, it would have like a much larger weight. It played like a much larger part in the final score. Whereas like once I started fine tuning, the LGBM models were starting to get progressively better every time you fine tuned, because they were like tuned on more and more data. And so like their weight increased to that point. Yeah, so like I calculated effectively how much the weight would increase by every time they fine tuned. And so you can see here, so what I've done now is every time I fine tune them, I increase the amount of weight given to that model. So like as the competition goes on, the LGBM models are going to play more and more of a part in the final prediction.
Nice.
So like that was one of my submissions where I do this, where I like increase the LGBM weight. Whereas obviously like there's a chance that, I don't know, if you get some dodgy data or something, that it might start giving too much weight to the LGBMs. And so my second one is just with a fixed set of weights that don't increase. They're exactly the same model. They both fine tune on 5 days. One of them increases the weights as it goes, and one of them just keeps it fixed.
Cool.
So,
Nice.
I have no idea, will it work or not?
Can we look at that fine-tuned model function? I'm just curious. I heard about you saw talking about that last time. I never got a chance to try that out myself.
Can you do what, sorry?
I look at the fine-tune model function.
The one that's showing at the minute?
That's fine-tune all, right? Inside that you use a fine-tune model.
So this one rattles through all the ones that takes the extended features, and this is like all the models that take just the normal ones. In the fine-tuning, there's not much to it. It's just, these are exactly the same parameters that I use in training the model to start with, and the only difference is this thing here, which is like effectively like the number of epochs that it's trained for. And like this here in the fine tuning, this is just like set to 3. So like I do 3 epochs per new date, and then the fine tuning period, as I say, I'm using 5 days. So in this case, so it's 3 times 5, 15 estimators. So for each 5 days of data, I run it for 15 more epochs, and like all of the rest is the same. And as I say, there's just stuck at 2 different types of LGBM, so it just gives it like a different set of the features each time, depending on which model it is. Yeah, so it's just very basic. It is just the same as the training. Just
So how is
What
this
is the
fine?
extended? Sorry, go ahead. JP.
No, I was just curious, like I'm just trying to wrap my head around how like the fine tuning versus why is this not overwriting your previous model?
Well, so like yeah, so it's the only difference in here in the fit
Oh,
function.
there's an I never saw that. Okay.
I'm giving it the previous model,
Yes.
so it takes the previous model and fine tunes it.
Awesome. That is cool. Okay, I completely missed that in that model. Everything else looked the same, but yeah, okay, fine. Now that makes so
Yeah,
much sense.
And
so
I
sorry,
think
that's
the other
the
thing,
difference.
yeah, and the other thing I learned is, which is I haven't dug into it, so it's somewhat mind bending for me too, is by giving the one other thing I pointed out very early on is I'd learned that after after training on a number of folds, what the guy was doing was finding out the best depth that the models or the average depth that the models were training to using like the average of the num estimators and then making that the num estimators for the final model that he trained on the entire data. And so that was interesting because, you learn that, by using the average of the estimators, number of estimators of the training on different folds, you could probably get a good estimate of what's the best number of estimators to train when you're training on all of the data. But then, this thing that Steve pointed out could be done says that if you just make the number of estimators, if you use the init model to be your original model, and then give it, and my previous understanding from what I just described was the n estimators is like the number of levels or the number of, average number of levels that your tree is used to predict. But then by this usage of num estimators, you kind of make it like, if it's on a daily basis to keep it simple, instead of what Steve has done here, which is like, 5 days times the 3, which is 15. So if you just use the n estimators as 3, then I was like, how, when you're, let's say the prior value of the number of estimators was 1,800 or something, and then you give it a 3, in this usage, it seems like num estimators, as Steve was just articulating, is almost like the number of epochs that you are allowing the fine tuning. But earlier, my mental model was that of the depth of trees for num estimators. And I haven't yet figured out how to reconcile these two models in my head. Like how in this case, by giving it, if num estimators, according to the prior model I had, which is based on, when he trains on the folds, he finds out that, the average is about some number 1800, and he trains a model with 1800 being the value that you provide, and trains a new model. But I guess the real answer to that is to continue to think of the num estimators as probably the number of epochs, because that model works in both cases. Because if you're saying in the first case, by figuring out for each of the folds that you are kind of training it for 1800 epochs is what gives you the best, then you want to continue to train with 1800 for a model which trains on the entire data set. And here you're just training it for 3 epochs. Therefore, the depth of the trees is not what n estimators is. It's like more the epochs that you train for.
No, my mental model is slightly different. It's parallel with the deep learning stuff, where when you fine tune, you're fine tuning like the last layers. So here, at least my understanding was that you're kind of not touching the top 1797 trees. It's just that the last 3 trees, the last 3 where the boosting is happening, is where you're kind of updating your model. rather
That's,
than
I think, probably
touching the
more accurate.
1797. But yeah, I haven't tried it because otherwise, if
No,
you
no,
keep
that is more accurate. That is a more accurate, because I think somewhere I read that it is that the num estimators gives you the levels of boosting. So that is accurate, because that's the best explanation, because in the first series that I just went through, it means that you're training a new model with 1800 boosts. Now you are training a model with, just like you say, the last 3 layers equivalent in deep learning, but here just boosting it 3 times.
Yeah, that's what I think is happening here.
Yeah, that model. Okay, at least I learned something. Good. Okay, so the number of estimators is the number of boosting levels that you do, which is akin to the number of layers in deep learning. Okay. Thanks.
Actually, talking about these N estimators, Steve, I have a question where initially you told you ended up like doing a hyperparameter sweep optional, and that took really long, and then your CV score looked good, but when you submitted, your score was bad. I'm curious,
Yeah, that's right.
like, how do you start with an N estimators like for your submission? Like, for example, you were using 1800, like, was that something which was there in the notebook, or did you kind of run some experiments, submissions, and then see what to play around with? I'm curious, how do you start?
Well, it was like Srinivas said, like the original public notebook that has like the 5 folds, like within it, yeah. So like it trains the 5 folds, and then like it averages the number of estimators, and then it fully trains a model and like on all of the data with the average number of estimators.
Right.
So yeah, so like that was sort of where I got this value from, the 1800 or whatever I'm on.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, so but like then I trained, like, rather than just training one model and all the data, I trained lots.
Okay.
So you can see.
And that one you were saying
Yes.
you were just kind of changing the random states, right?
Yeah, so like the parameters, you can add an extra parameter on here, which is like a random parameter. And so I was giving it a random seed to get like
right. Okay, cool.
Train for exactly the same number of estimators with the same data, all the data, but just giving it a random seed to get new models that were slightly different.
Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was running through Optuna and sorry, Srinivas, I was just saying that I was running through Optuna and it took forever, and then I never realized before that Kaggle notebooks turn off after 12 hours. I didn't know there was a limit on that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, like I was running mine in Google Colab or whatever.
Okay.
Like even they turn off after 12 as well. So
okay.
but yeah, like what I tended to do was, yeah, like I had a notebook from somewhere else that there is a, like in the Optuna thing, so you can like for each one of these parameters, you can like set like either a range to use or like a set of discrete values, and it'll try them. And then you can choose like different types of search. So I just had a like sort of random search running on it, and like have a big range of values, and then I would get the model back and like see what it had given me back. And then like say one of the parameters had hit its minimum value or its maximum value, then
kind of extend that. Perfect.
Shift towards that and go again. But as I say, like I ended up with something that said good cross validation, and then stuck it in the Kaggle, and it was rubbish. So it was all a waste of time.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have... Sorry, Srinivas, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, there's another similar competition which is running, which I jumped into, which is called the Energy Fit or ENE Fit, some solar power thing, but it's like, I don't know, it's extremely similar. The submission API is similar. You're using LGBM models, you're predicting stuff in a time series fashion. And the last 3 days, yeah, that's what I was seeing. And it takes like 12 hours to run this. The same idea which you suggested, Steve, like you run this broad search, then kind of find decent range of parameters, and then rerun with that kind of fine-tuned narrow range of parameters. And yeah, so I was wondering, like, if you were doing something similar, or is there some other strategy to kind of go about it? But I guess there is nothing else to escape this. You have to just wait patiently and see what happens. So
yeah, so
okay.
I'm not
The
sure how
question I asked was on your, these LGBM parameters are different in like some ways from what the original guy was using, the 5-fold time. For example, these were 256. Some of them are the same, like learning rate, number of jobs, blah, 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 are all the same. But he didn't use the regularization alpha and lambda values. So I was wondering from some other notebooks that are using it, or did you find that out through this Optina tuning process and figure out that?
No, the Optuna thing didn't give me any good stuff at all, really. These values came, yeah, there was other public notebooks towards the end that had like slightly better public scores, and those two, the Reg Alpha and the Reg Lambda, I got them out of that.
Okay. Because I didn't have them in my original, so in fact, I think I ended up, training a set of models using these parameters, and then a set of models using what the original parameters that I had, and they kind of gave results. I didn't see too much of a difference between the two. Marginal in the 4th decimal place or something, but that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, that was ridiculous. Like how close the scores were, and training any number of n estimators, it just didn't push me up, or changing the learning rate stuff. So yeah, trying to figure out how to set these parameters is a good skill for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is like you had pointed out, recollecting the article we talked about, but the LGBM parameter choices, but those are like almost starting points, right? And then the reason I also asked you the question was, for example, based off of that or something like that, and there are so many parameters, like I wouldn't have known about the regularization alpha and regularization lambda if somebody hadn't already used it. I mean, you can tweak, num leaves from 256 to 512, subsample by something, and so on. But, completely new value or completely new parameters like reg alpha or reg lambda. I mean, when to use it, or like what values to use it with is completely out of left field. Like if somebody were to ask me, I would just shrug my shoulders, right?
I can give you a quick brief rundown. After Steve pointed out Optuna, I was really curious because for head or tail, I could just not figure out how things were being set, because like you said, there are so many parameters. I don't know if I can share my screen. Let me see. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep. Now we can.
Okay, cool. So this is the AnyFit one that I was just talking of, which is the, and so my strategy finally, after kind of back and forth trying a couple of times, it was like, don't set any of your other parameters. Just start with the tree and give some decent range. And then like Steve was pointing out, you can kind of set another a variable called step, and you can kind of like jump that by 500, and then you just run this experiment and you kind of start seeing the results like this, right? For each experiment, this is a very good thing to see. Sorry,
when you say step, every parameter by some fraction of 500, or are you stepping
you're stepping just the trees from 3,500 up to 4,500 in increments of 500. So it will try for 3,500, 4,000, 4,500. This is the start, this is the stop, and this is like the jump. Does it make sense? You breaking up only for me? Sorry.
Yeah, he's breaking up.
Oh,
He's breaking
sorry.
up for me as well.
Are you saying? I was saying, are both inclusive, start and stop?
Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, you just kind of run that experiment, you see results like this. What I was observing was that you kind of need to see that this is the learning, whatever your metric you're kind of evaluating on, this should drop. So this one is dropping, so it kind of makes sense. All these kind of make sense. And then as the experiments run, you can kind of see it kind of sprints out what your best trial is. So this one is saying best trial is 0 with a value of 69, whatever my metric is. I think it's MAE on this one. And then you kind of come back and so, okay, fine. So I see, what is it at 0? Sorry, where did I jump? Here. So for 0, I'm seeing like my iterations is 900. So I think, okay, fine. So maybe I can kind of narrow down that range. So you kind of narrow down this range to something there, kind of reduce your step size, and then kind of start opening up the other parameters that you have. And then, like you were saying, you have no clue about what these million other parameters are. Half of them, I think, are like present there just to kind of prevent overfitting. So at least my current observation is it's good to set them to something. Or if you're going with the learning rate and you know the traditional way of doing it in deep learning is like you go in this in the range of logs, right? So it'll be 0 0.1, 0 0.001, 0 0.0001. So you can kind of set another thing called log is equal to true, and that kind of jumps through bigger values. And then again, you can kind of zone in and fine tune. Yeah, that's kind of all I have had with my experiments with Optina. And I don't know, it's kind of doing like a decent job, but yeah, it takes forever. And yeah, 12 hours is not enough. Like, depending on what you're running with, either LGB or cat boost or something like that, it kind of times out pretty soon. But sorry, the other thing is, as these iterations run, you can kind of see this one will say best trial is 6. So it updated from 0 to 6. But the nice thing to observe is that iteration is really not that bad. I mean, it's not that different. This one says 850 and the other one was saying 900. So it's a fair enough approximation range to say like, okay, fine, maybe I can kind of stick with that kind of a range. So, yep.
But this basically says that you would have to, and that's the part that I was wondering also, right, is based on this approach, what you're saying is you start with very rudimentary settings and get that, and then open the window to each incremental parameter by parameter. But the thing that I was concerned, right, and that itself you're saying is like, because you have to run it for 12 hours.
Which again, I think probably is a wrong thing that I'm doing, because I think I'm missing out the very first step of what Jeremy suggests is like trying to subset your data, right? Which I'm doing all this kind of backwards, I feel. Trying to subset your data and build a good CV will kind of eliminate this problem of 12 hours. You'll still have to wait, but not for this long. But I'm just kind of getting a feel for it. So this is probably not the best way to do it. But I'm just saying, like, I think it kind of works. It seems like it's working here.
Yeah. That's but even, let's say you even do it on a fold, right? Like instead of doing it on all of the data. Let's say you do it on a fold to simplify the time aspect. But the problem that I'm thinking of is orthogonal to that, as I'll explain in a minute. Because at least the approach you mentioned is you start with a base and then incrementally open the window to each parameter, right? But the concern I have is parameters could interact, and if that's the case, right? Are there sets of orthogonal parameters or groups of parameters that you should optimize together versus incrementally just doing one by one? And if you do incrementally one by one, you have like, whatever n factorial of, or whatever n choose something, or all permutations of the number of parameters.
Incrementally opening it is something that I didn't do. My logic behind that was trees, number of estimators, number of trees is probably going to be the one which is going to drive the time by most. If you start with 500 trees versus 5,000 trees, that's going to really make things very drastic. Changing the learning rate, changing the call sample, changing, I don't know, the regularization values, all that for 500 tree or 5,000 tree is really not going to change it that much. Early stopping probably could change things. So that's why setting number of trees seemed like the most important to me. And then I pretty much open all the other values that I want to open that I'm going to try. And then, yeah, just let it run from there. That's totally valid what you're saying, but that's going back to the whole hyperparameter search thing, right? You can kind of get bogged down in that, and you can, yeah, just keep fine-tuning stuff like that forever. So it's kind of finding a good range and then kind of probably iterating from there. I don't think there is any concrete answer for the question that you asked. Like if there is a particular way to go about it.
Whether there are groups, and is there a particular way or method to go about narrowing down versus, just trial and error? Because in some cases, I think, because the two thoughts. One, column by sample or sample by column could also have, besides, like you said, that I agree with you that the number of trees and then the leaf nodes is another that could, the number of trees and the leaf nodes that you leave are things that can have like a first order effect, so to speak. And I was thinking that sample by column could also have a first order effect, because, it's like, that's like a threshold that you have to get to when it is really good. And then like if you're below the threshold, it will probably suck. And above it, weighing it by much doesn't really.
Isn't sample by column just saying like take 60% of the columns randomly? So I don't think that also makes a difference in terms of.
Really? Because I was thinking that there's a threshold for, there would, again, total guess, but I would imagine that in some cases that I saw from Jeremy doing and stuff, that there is some level of threshold for that. Like below the threshold, it doesn't, like, okay, if you choose 0.6, that's probably a good starting point. But if you choose 0.2 or 0.3, that may not be sufficient.
If you read the parameter listing itself, it says greater than equal to 0.5. So those things automatically cut down ranges. So you don't even have to bother like trying those things there. So but like if you open the parameter page, there's like a ton of parameters. So choosing stuff from there, I was mainly choosing. At this point, I'm so worried about like not overfitting. I should not be doing that. That is my main concern. So it's like trying to turn on all the overfitting stuff that can prevent all those flags.
Yeah, and before I forget, the one other thought I had, and I haven't, this is where, Jeremy in some cases takes like a extraordinarily, what I would call, analytical approach to doing these things, which really, like helps in the sense that he doesn't do anything by trial and error. He kind of like, even if it's trial and error, he wants a method to the madness, right? Like, why would I do something? I mean, I'm just not going to waste my time trying a bunch of things, but I have to have thought behind that. So one of the things I was thinking of, and again, I don't know whether you've tried it or had any, is the, I think these things also have, I forget now what it's called technically, but kind of like the explanatory capacity of the parameters at the end.
Totally. Feature importance.
Right? Like I forget.
Feature importance.
Feature importance. That's the word as well. So feature importance. So the thing I was thinking of is, after you do like a base Optuna thing, right? Like let's say you've run 12 hours, like first, or run a set, then you do feature importance, and based on that kind of eliminate the the lower order things and see whether fine-tuning the higher order feature importance thing matters.
I'm pretty sure, that I have not reached that stage, but that is a very valid point. Like, I think that again will make your experiments run faster. So I think it's a very good step to kind of incorporate somewhere there. Maybe not the best thing for Kaggle, but in real life, I would imagine, like Kaggle, you want your 4th, 5th decimal place. So I don't know, some random feature probably which is really tiny contributions can help. But what you're saying totally makes sense. That should be one of the steps to be incorporated there. Because yeah, there are some which are like orders of magnitude lower than, I don't know, let's say the top 20% of the features or something. So they should be probably thrown out as early as possible to reduce your dataset size.
Right,
Yeah,
because
that was
that
the
will
good thing
also
about
help
it.
speed up.
Yeah, the LG Boost, it's good because of the fact, yeah, you can run the extra step at the end and it'll show you which features are important.
Right.
Yeah, like I tried that and like, yeah, cut my features away down to about 30 features because it was like saying, yeah, like, I don't know, 100 of my features it said didn't contribute anything.
Okay.
So yeah, I tried with just a 30, obviously to like, to make things speed up, but as you say, like then the Kaggle score dropped away by a few decimal places, and so
Okay.
I put them all back in again.
I think that's a good idea. I should try that as my next step. Drop them, do my experiments, and then in the end bring them back in to see how. Yeah, I shall try to do that.
Yeah,
that's
I was thinking that could help in the speed
totally
aspect too, right?
Yeah.
Like because you're focusing on the things that matter, you know, a higher order, and then
exactly.
you eventually dump the rest, and the rest are varying fractionally anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, makes sense. Steve,
but what are your extended features? Like compared to whatever base versus extended, you had that extended option.
It was like, yeah, so like in the original notebook or whatever, the person had done the features, I think, I don't know, it was 120 features or something. And then somebody, I think it was just like somebody added in a new lag time thing or whatever. So suddenly, instead of having like 1, 3, and 10 or whatever, they had 1, 3, 5, and 10, something like that. Right. But yeah, like all my original LGBMs had only been trained on the smaller set. And I wanted to keep them. I didn't want to have to retrain them. And actually, as well, it turned out that those models trained on the lesser set of features, they actually performed slightly better.
Okay.
So
interesting. Yeah, that was the other thing I was getting annoyed with right now. Is like every time I add a feature or find some new features, I had to train the whole thing again.
Yeah.
But yeah, keeping that, okay. I wonder if there is something like fine-tuning with an extra column. Probably doesn't make sense, but I was just thinking of that.
So you can. One I stumbled on it, right? Like you not find, you can, but it doesn't give you good results. So for example, one other thing I learned, I mean, I should write this stuff down so I remember these things about LGBM. A, that it can be fine-tuned. Second, you can use, or it's not precisely that you're talking about. What no, it's not.
Are you talking of the one with new columns you can drop off?
Yeah, you can predict on a new column is what I found out. That's different than well, isn't it well, it isn't, right? Because what you're saying is
but
like, it's a variant of it in the sense that you have a model that hasn't seen a column and it will see a column when it predicts. But that's basically same, right? Like you just have a new column. What I found out was it's not that far off, but it's worse. So for example, what I did was I added the reveal targets to the data set, and then obviously it hasn't seen reveal targets before, and I used the same model. I didn't do fine-tuning anything. I just used that model to predict on data which has the added reveal target column added. And it gave me like, instead of 3 point something, it was worse. So then I gave up, but it wasn't, I'm wondering whether it was terribly worse or it was still 5.3 something. So, you know, again, like you say, in Kaggle it matters, but the question is in real life, does it or does it not matter to further? But at least the fact that it works and it doesn't bug, because there is by the way, there is a flag you have to set. Ignore something.
Yeah, something dropped through. Yeah, I saw that.
Right. And if you set that flag, then you can do that, which is a good thing to know. I mean, I know that you have to use with caution, but it's again something good to know with respect to LGBM models.
Steve, before I wanted to know, do we have to wait for 3 months till you can share a solution, or Is it fine to share a solution now? I'm very curious to look at the notebook and ask you
I
more
presume,
questions.
I presume I can share it now, like, because yeah,
Awesome.
like
Yeah,
you can't,
because
you can't submit anything now. So
Okay, perfect. Okay.
yeah, you can't submit. So actually, Steve, one request, if you can still, I know you mentioned your tabnet was trained on Colab, but if you can share it on Slack, the notebook, I'm still frustrated
yeah.
with my inability to get the tabnet to train. So I'd like to know, what you did and compare it with what I was doing and find where my problem was. So if you could share that notebook along with this full, your final notebook, that'd be great.
okay, will do. What, did your tabnet not train at all?
It trained, but it failed on the submission, right? Like, and I wasn't doing anything fancy with tabnet, right? Because of,
Was that just was it just the submission of it by itself?
Yeah, just the
Yeah,
submission of it by itself.
I do remember. Yeah, like I had to play about with some things to make the submission fit. Yeah, it took a while, but as I say, I thought it was just that thing I showed last week about taking a copy
Yeah,
of
that
the.
I've done. I did that. I fixed that. But even after that, and here again is the frustrating part, right? It worked to give me the answer on the folds and created the submission file.
That's
When
the
I
worst error.
submit the submission file, I get the submission error.
There should be some better way where you cannot probe, but at least figure out what the error is. That's the most annoying thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's where I was saying I wish the one change, I mean,
True,
of course, I'm
correct.
blaming my tools, but, I
No,
wish
but
they
that makes
hadn't
sense.
just fixed
It should represent the
the
data which
three
you're going to
last
train
ones.
on. Yeah, so it should represent it better rather than having all the 200 stocks when you know 200 is not going to be there. I agree with that. Yeah,
Right.
but yeah,
And that's the reason I failed. And I found that out after running for 6 hours or some stupid thing. And I'm just like, oh my God, can't you have told me this earlier? And now so I was really bummed.
Yeah, so for my tabnet prediction, can you see my screen here?
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to do some extra stuff. So yeah, like I had to make sure that they not a number values were got rid of. If you've got like any
Yes, I did
not a
that
number
too.
thing.
Correct. The one thing
Yes,
I had a question
so
on where
all of
I
that's
failed probably.
replacing.
Yes, I did all that because I think whatever notebook I was looking at, I had that and I saw that thing. But what I didn't do and I was confused by is where do the cat features come from?
Well, you make them up yourself. You decide which ones are the categorical features. Yeah, so like for example, like the stock IDs, a categorical feature. Yeah, so like in my case, yeah, so you have to make sure that that was set as well for like the inference stuff.
That's probably because I didn't know what features, because stock ID is just used to predict the thing, right? Like you aren't using stock ID. No. Yeah, I didn't know what features were set in tabnet as cat features. That is probably my issue.
But
you would have had to set that right before training. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to decide yourself which ones you want to be the categorical features before you train it. But then you need to make sure when you come to the inference, you use the same ones again. So because of the fact, all of these ones here, like seconds, minutes, day of the week and stuff, because of the fact that they're numbers, you could have got away without making them categorical.
Yeah, and by the way, that's what I found out because they are numbers right now, and apparently that doesn't work because my notebook failed. And it doesn't fail when I run it on the folds, it fails when I submit. So that's again an issue where, by treating them as numbers, your notebook runs successfully, trains on the folds, predicts on the folds, but does not succeed. At least that's the difference I notice right now between what you're sharing and what I have. Because everything else is the same. I just did not do the category. I checked that there are no nands slightly differently, but I ensured that there were no nands anywhere. And I think it's this categorical feature thing that tricked me up, because again, that's the one difference that I noticed.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So
everything else is exactly the same.
yeah, so that's the only difference really, is like I make sure that I set those columns that have been categorical to because like they're label encoding things.
Right. Yeah.
So if you don't do that, it
Okay.
probably falls over.
Yeah, and it does, because like that's a painful lesson I learned. I was like, oh man, come on, like why? And then I saw this
Yeah, I
somewhere,
still don't
but I
understand
didn't
why
realize.
though.
Yeah, I don't get
What?
why that setting it to categorical is important. I mean, I can understand if it gives you poorer results when you don't treat it as categorical, but if it runs successfully with folds and stuff, and then why would it fail when you run it on the actual data?
Yeah, I'm surprised. If you could make that change and try submitting again, that'll be good to know if that is the issue or there's something else.
I'll definitely do that. Because that was one of my frustrations. And then I needed a week break from this before I go and try my, the thing of attaching the right. I was just so bummed with, because everything worked, and I was like, yes, I finally have the thing training, fine tuning every day and stuff, and I submit and it runs, and I'm like happy. I'm like, oh, now I submit and get a good score, and I'm submitting, and I'm like, submission error. Bummer. So like, but Steve, I hope you get a gold in this one. You're at least close enough, I guess, 50. So hopefully some of the other people fall off over a 3-month period.
I don't know, like it is like completely random really, isn't it? It's like like hopefully at the end I was just like sort of trying to concentrate on trying to ensure that like it'll be able to survive for the 3 months, and like because of the fine tuning, because it's changing the models as it goes along. Whereas a lot of people, I think, have just got fixed models. People who are like top of the public leaderboard, they've probably sort of fine-tuned their models just to get high public leaderboard scores. So I do think there was like 4,000 teams or something in it. So I imagine like a lot of people's models will probably start failing as the competition actually starts.
Moves on. Right.
But yeah, mine could equally well fall over
too. Right, is the danger of I mean, again, I would have preferred if they had a script of some kind which would run your model for 60 spurious dates even, and told you that didn't work, because it kind of is really, I think, terrible that if your model is fine on the 48, it works and everything, but because of the change from 48 to 60, it fails. That's another case where, if there's some simple script which said, oh, if I run it for 60 bogus instances, it fails, so you better fix it, and told you that that's the reason, then you can at least focus on the right problem of just making it run in time. Because right now, as you say, people are shooting in the dark somewhat by applying some scaling and all that. And then it's not that their algorithm is bad or anything of that kind. It's just that it doesn't fit for the 60 days within the time period allocated, which I think is kind of defeats the purpose of the company.
I think, Steve, you had a hack for that, right? Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking it's like when you design the software to send like a probe off to Mars or something. Like once it's gone, you're just hoping that you've sort of tested it enough.
Yeah.
Like once it's gone, you've got no control over it.
Actually, I was, strangely enough, I was reading about, talking of Mars, I was just reading about, Steve, you might get a kick out of this, about, the British were the ones who pioneered this cavity-based Flystone, I would like to say, but it's actually something else, but which enabled radar. And radar was, it's a book about radar developments and how that has influenced. And by the way, I was shocked to discover that radar research was what drove the development of the first computer in core memory and stuff, because they wanted to track planes coming in from the Soviet Union and potentially dropping nuclear bombs and all this kind of stuff. But it's fascinating discovery of how the British were actually leading in that, and kind of they prompted the Americans to get into it. They were kind of yeah. My God.
That's Christmas
Shut the
around
door,
at your
mate.
house.
I know. Like some people showed up, and I'm like happy to listen to. Anyway, so the point of it was, eventually some of the last thing they did was radio astronomy and stuff like that, and that's where I found out that the Mars probe, not I think it was Voyager, where they had to launch, exactly to your point, many years in advance, and then wait for it, and then wake it up, and it has to perform some operations, and how they the story of how they struggle with it, and had to debug it live, and it's even more complicated. You have to send instructions, and then the instruction takes like I don't know, half an hour or multiple hours to get there, and then those instructions in turn will execute it like a couple of weeks later, and then you have to wait to see whether those instructions have done something, which that data gets back to you another like week later. So it's just fascinating how the space folks deal with all these problems. Incredible.
Yeah, so as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if like a lot of people's models fall over, and I've just taken a guess that there's 62 days of 62 working days between the 20th of December and the 20th of March. So if I've miscalculated that, then my model will probably run out of time, because it is just about sort of under the 9 hours when it gets to doing on 62. So
I think there was a very interesting notebook in this competition itself where someone had published things that didn't work, and it talked about like test-driven development for this reason, how you can kind of simulate stock missing and then like these 62 days and all that kind of stuff. It was interesting stuff, but yeah, to start thinking and writing code like that, not there yet. Still far from that step.
But the problem was as well, like, I don't know if you noticed, but like if you ran their test API, like the first thing it would pop up and say was like, this test API, you can't really use it as an estimate of how long things are going to take. So so I'd copied their sort of test code and run that. So I suppose that's a good thing, maybe, in that I sort of copied their thing and ran it for 62 dates, and it just fitted into the 9 hours. Whereas, like, if theirs is going faster, then hopefully it should be a bit of time to spare.
Right. Talking about time, Kaggle question. When you run a notebook, that runs on the server, right? So it should make no difference whether I shut my laptop, close my tab. Does that make a difference? I'm curious.
No, like, as soon as you save it, you can shut your notebook.
Okay, so you got to save it and shut your notebook. But what if I'm running one of these optional experiments and this takes like for 12 hours? I know I can't shut it, but like, yeah, I can close my laptop, right? Because I've had weird instances where it just stops training. So I was curious if I'm missing something, or is there something I need to do?
So are you running interactively or doing it using save and run all commit?
Oh, no, I'm just running it interactively. This is no submission. This is just optional.
Yeah, no, but even that you can just save and run all commit rather than run interactive, right?
Wait, but I don't want to submit, right? That's what I'm curious. Like,
no, but that submit just says submit, save and run all submit, or save and run all commit is, I forget what is the exact verbiage, but one is just saving what you have edited. So that is the non-default option in save. So it just saves your code, but doesn't run. The second is save and run all commit or save and run all submit. I forget what it's called. And that one just runs your notebook, but it doesn't submit it.
Is this the save version?
That submission,
yeah.
Like if you go here, when you have that save and run all commit is just non-interactively run your notebook. So why are you running it interactively? You can just run the save and run all commit, and that you can shut your notebook, close your tab, do whatever, and it will run in the background. And when it's done, you can go look it up, and it will have all the output and everything.
Oh, so all the output cells are still there. Okay, cool. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I should try that then.
Well, they're meant to
Don't run it interactively.
Yeah, if you run it interactively, you probably have to keep your laptop open or your browser open. But like as Srinivas says, if you just like click the standard save, it'll run it, and when you come back, all of the cells, the output will be populated. So like that's what I would do. So I would save that, and then I don't know. Yeah, so I would stop the notebook then. I don't know, you're running with a GPU, but yeah, so I would make sure I've stopped it, because if you're running with a GPU, it'll take all your GPU time.
Okay, that saves on GPU time too.
And you should shut off your interactive run when you save and run all commit. Your interactive continues to run, by the way, if you're still in your notebook. So you should cancel it as soon as you save and run all commit.
Is that order important? Like, do I need to first do save and run all commit and then kind of turn my notebook off? Or does that make a difference?
Because you're launching the job before you kill the interactive job, right? Because if you kill the interactive job, where are you going to launch the job from?
You're saying if it, so like, for example, this is switched off now, right? I still see save and run.
I think you're okay. I think you're okay to save that there. Yeah, like that'd be fine. So it'll save it, it'll run it, and it'll populate the cell output. But yeah.
I see. Okay.
But what I'm saying is, the point I think is that if you're running interactively and you save and run all commit, the point I was making is your interactive run continues to run, and you have to shut it off. Otherwise, you're consuming two sets of resources. One, the job that's running in the background, and the job that you're running interactively continues to consume the GPU, especially if you're on GPU. So you have two jobs running at that point, and you have to kill the interactive or stop the interactive thing, either by shutting off the power or by just stopping the job. Stopping the interactive area.
And the save and run commit stuff. And the save and run commit stuff, is that GPU hours counted towards your 30 hours or?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But in this case, have you got GPU turned on there?
No, because I'm running this forever, I turned it off and I'm just running.
Yeah, for like the LGBM, I think you can get away without the GPU. Maybe it's a bit faster, but yeah, like if you're just like sort of running it for 12 hours, you don't need it, and it doesn't matter so much. You'll not be using your resources.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sounds good. Good to know. I completely didn't know that option existed.
Yeah, once you submit, save and run all commit, then you just log off, do anything, and and then you can come back and it will all be there.
Oh, okay. That reminds me. I had one more question. Is there a limit on, like, I know there are 5 submission limits on a day, right? But for a specific notebook, can I not submit 5, like, basically at 4:30 yesterday, I decided, I have 30 minutes. Let me just submit with different random seeds. It just took 2. It didn't let me submit the other 3. Is that something that you guys have faced too?
No. Yeah, like as I say, like I was like sort of trying to fine tune my parameters. So I would save it and submit it, then alter the parameters, save it and submit it. And I was doing that 5 times a day.
I don't know why. Okay.
And just like all at the same time. Yeah, so I had 5 submitting at the same time.
Yeah, I had more than 2 for sure. I had 3 or 4 going at the same time.
Yeah, I've never had that issue before, because I mean, like, at least the least I could try was different random seeds. So I was at least trying to put something through. Weird. I don't know why that never went through. Anyway, good to know that that's not, no, must be just an issue on that submission.
Yeah, sometimes I mean Kaggle does get flaky though, like Steve was saying. I mean, he had that problem, and I had a slightly different problem where my because I was editing my previous work and trying to modify it as Steve was doing, and I couldn't find my notebooks wouldn't show up. But like he had those blank things. When I went to your work, then the notebooks wouldn't show up. So I wouldn't know how to pick. And then I found out some workaround by looking on the left side of the screen and figuring out. But the left side only shows you the top 3 notebooks or the top 4 recent ones. And then I couldn't figure out if I had to search for the 5th one, and I had to find all kinds of workaround. And I was like, okay. And so Kaggle does flake out once in a while. But that's rare. So.
Talking about submissions, now once, like, for example, the Optiver stuff is done, right? Is there a way for us to go back and look at all the submissions that we've made?
Yeah. If you do to submissions, if you go to submissions, like pull up your, share your, whatever.
Okay. 1 second.
And go to the 3 dots.
Wait 1 second. So I need to pull up the competition, right?
Yeah.
So let me pull up October. Which one is that? Okay. There used to be a submission.
Yeah, if you click on leaderboard, the submissions will appear for whatever reason normally.
That'll be just yours, right? The best one, whatever out of the 2 that you picked. I was just wondering, like, can you see all the others? There used to be a way, I remember.
Yeah.
I just couldn't find
Yeah. No, there is. If you go to your
I thought if you went to the top, but
or is it just that this competition is not letting you see because of its weird 3
No,
stuff?
you can. I looked at it repeatedly. So click on the 3 dots.
Here?
The top. Yeah.
That's all shows up for me.
Okay, never mind. You can go to your work. Go to your work. The left.
Where is that?
Left bot. Yeah, there. Okay, and click on the competition will just take you back. Code. Click on code. Right. You have
So let's see the October one
right?
here. Okay, here.
Yeah. Okay.
my submissions was still showing as a menu option. Like when I click on leaderboard, I get submissions up.
Oh, really?
To show me what I've submitted, yeah. Or I was earlier in the week.
Okay. So when you come to leaderboard, it shows you all your submissions?
No, it was
like,
it would give me like another menu thing for submissions. I'm not sure where it's disappeared for some reason. It's normally there. I don't know where it's gone. Maybe it's because the competition's sort of in a funny state where it hasn't put up any private stuff yet.
Okay. Cool.
Maybe it's like off.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, like normally it'll be there and you can see
Sure,
every single submission that you made. And it depends on the competition, but yeah, so it'll show you the score for every notebook that you submitted. And when the private one starts running, it'll show you the private scores for those.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I'm also wondering where where I used to go for. You can see in all of your submissions. In fact, that's how you typically select the 2 submissions.
No, that's before the submission, right? So that, yes. I was just wondering, after the competition is over at this stage, so I'm guessing, I think it's probably the state of the competition. I'm thinking if I go back to one of the older competitions, maybe that will be better stuff, right? So let's, oh shit, no, there's one.
Those are Carolyn's, yeah.
Oh, yeah. How do I go to my...
Have you got all competitions, I think?
All competitions.
Or maybe your work, sorry. If you go back a sec.
For your work?
Um,
Yeah.
no, where you?
Sorry.
No, if you go to competitions,
Okay.
and then go to your work.
Oh,
See,
there. I see. Okay.
and then you go completed. Let's see if that active.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, pick one of them.
Okay, let's do that guy. Ah,
Ah,
there
yeah,
we go.
you see submissions has come
Okay.
back now.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can see here. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
Makes sense.
so I don't know why that screen's disappeared for like this competition, but I presume it'll
This-
appear back again at some point.
All right. Okay.
You tried just typing in the URL with submissions, October?
Oh, like that. Oh, not a bad idea. Let me try that actually. So this is the one. And which was the one? This. So just add submissions here, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Aha.
There you go.
Perfect. That works. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Are we the guys planning on joining something else, or are we taking off during Christmas and then coming back?
Yeah, I was thinking
thoughts?
that probably we can take next week off, and maybe on Slack people can post, and they are adding a few competitions, and let's meet on the 7th. Then it would be we'd just be skipping 1 week, which is next week, because last time we did something like that, and then last minute people had to drop off, and I'd asked mine to host, and poor guy ended up just by himself. So I was thinking, rather than going through that, let's just call it done for the year and meet on the 7th, but potentially, kind of communicate through Slack whether people are interested in any new competitions that they would like to participate in.
Yeah, I haven't taken a look what's new or whatever, so I was just going to have a break over Christmas and think about it in the new year. But yeah,
right, yeah, that's what I would recommend, because we can start on the 7th. By that time, like if you look at it in the new year, then they may, who knows, they may add 1 or 2 more. They've been adding at a decent clip in the last quarter that I noticed. But yeah, and there's been a lot of stuff happening in the LLM space again and stuff. So they may have some interesting ones there.
Right. So there was that AI detection stuff, whether the text was generated, which we spoke about. I think Terence brought it up like a few weeks ago. I was kind of quickly looking at that, because guess what? It's again LGPMs and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of piqued my interest. And one of the most ridiculous things happened is I made the highest public score submission, and I got like 961, which was like out of the bronze. I changed a bunch of random seeds, and then I pushed again, and I was able to submit like 4 or 5 notebooks. My score is still 961, but I'm in silver, and I don't know which notebook it is because I can't see after the 3rd decimal. So I have a notebook.
You can sort them by public score, and it'll show you which one's best.
Awesome.
Even though you can't see the decimals, you can see which one's better.
Iterate over that. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So how do I do that? Oh, public score. Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve. That one has like a month left. Just letting you guys know. And the other one, which I was saying, the solar one, that has like 45 days left. I'm kind of dabbling with those.
Yeah,
if
we start with something, I'd rather have a long runway, because it takes a while for people to get the discussion stuff going and all that. So let's see what happens. So we'll call it off next week, and then let's meet on, I think it's the 7th, which is the next first Saturday of the new year. Am I right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have our, actually it's the 6th. So
6th, okay.
We'll meet on the 6th of the new year. I think that will probably work out for the best.
Sounds good.
Give everybody a break, and then meet on the 6th. And people, if they look at it in the new year, then you can come in with some thoughts on which one you would like to pick.
I'll
Okay,
probably be stepping away for a little while, just have a bunch of other things going on, but it's been really great to hear all your guys' thoughts and thought processes. And anyway, so thanks.
Oh, thanks for joining us. And, we'll be here. It's been going on for a couple of years now. So hopefully you can rejoin when you feel like it.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. See you all in the new year.
Yeah, have a good
Thank
Christmas,
you.
New
You
Year,
as
and
well.
Happy holidays, guys.
Happy holidays.
see you later.
See ya. Bye.
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 Bye.